Hello and welcome to This Week at the Movies. My name is Matt,
I'm Eric.
and we came straight out of the spice fields to give you a report on this week's major new release, the first great film of 2024, Denis Villeneuve's Dune Part 2, which was the major release this week, dropped on Friday. It is the second film in a planned three-film adaptation of Frank Herbert's novel Dune. Was previously adapted as a film by David Lynch in 1984, and if you want something completely different than the current take on Dune, you should look that one up. If you're looking for something that has some Twin Peaks on acid vibes, the 1984 version of Dune will probably do that for you. But Denis Villeneuve gave us the first part of this was released kind of in the midst of the pandemic in fall of 2021, was in theaters, but same day and date dropped on HBO Max, which is honestly where I saw it from the comfort of my pajamas. Uh, but this one, definitely a spectacle that you should see in theaters if you can. In a premium format would be even better. I saw it on what is our version of IMAX at the theater here. I was not disappointed by that decision. I really love this one. I'm giving it 2 thumbs up. Eric, I took it that you enjoyed your trip to the spice field as well.
Yeah, if I could give 3 thumbs up, I would. Oh, see it on the biggest screen you can. Denis Villeneuve does all this direction of like very clear, simplistic shots. So he uses so much space on the screen. Things that need to feel big, and then there are large shots of simple, small, 2-person, 1-person interactions, headshots, and whatnot. They're gorgeous and they deserve to be seen as detailed as possible. And the sound design of this movie gives me tingles. Like everything from the soundtrack choice, which I never get bored of, like the big like operatic like singing or whatever for Arrakis and all that, and the like voices. I'm gonna get into this for a little bit, but Austin Butler using a dialect coach to sound like Stellan Skarsgård was a stroke of genius. I think he was incredible. And Paul Atreides, like Timothy Chalamet is amazing. He like as far as watching a character grow from like someone caught up in the waves of something going on around him to being like a lead in something, he was astounding. Like I'm floored. This is the kind of movie that's like I feel like it's bigger than me when I'm watching it. Like I can have an opinion about it, but it's like not. It's like a myth, you know. I am so happy with so much of what I saw. I will say a little bit of like if I have to critique a bit of it, I think they put so much effort and they did such a great job with Austin Butler's Fade character, but that's still, it feels like a decent amount of things that happen with him happen off screen, like a lot of his conquest of the planet, and there are, you know, like, oh, I had this interaction with him, his bloodline is secured, and like I don't really need that to happen off screen. It is really intimidating to just hear about it.
I don't know if we needed to see that. I was trying to
Right.
think. I don't think there's been
It just
a
felt quick.
sex
It
scene
felt
in
like
any of Villeneuve's films. They
no.
sort of don't even give you. They kind of even yada yada Paul and
Yeah. Yeah.
Jenny. I
And
just,
yeah, yeah.
it's almost like up until his most recent one, you don't really see that in Christopher Nolan films either.
Yeah.
Sometimes they know what they want to do, and that really isn't. He's
Yeah.
some of his films are in French, but he's French Canadian, not truly.
Yeah, there you go. So he's like apologizing. Sorry. No. Anyways. No. But like it just made me feel like that character who was done so well, there was just not enough of him. And that's really it. I defy,
Which is
like,
probably a
even
fair criticism for him based on the arc of this. But I will say I've seen people who have commented a little bit about some of the actors and the characters. You don't see a lot of them. You don't see a ton of Leah Seydoux in this one, although she has a couple of really memorable sequences, enough for me to think that she was one of the better parts of the film. You don't see a ton use with Florence Pugh's character
Mhm.
or Christopher Walken, but this is not the end, and they don't totally factor into all of the action in this one. And if you think back to the first Dune film, you get this, hey, this movie has Zendaya and has Javier Bardem, and you know what? They're in it for about 10 minutes of a 2 hour and 40-minute movie, but they're in it a heck of a lot now
Mhm.
as you kind of move through. And so
Mhm.
you have to plant the seeds to
Yep.
move forward. That has
But
commonly happened when you have like ongoing series. You probably have noticed I didn't really attempt to recap the plot here because I don't it's so overly complex that really
yeah.
you're going to watch this, and this is not one of those where, hey, you
Well,
could jump into the middle part of. You have got to go back and watch the first one if you've not seen it to jump into
you
this one.
okay,
I
you do, because you will be lost because of something I think they do really well, which is they let the characters talk to each other as if they live in the world. I had a friend who has this term that he uses that I think is people use, which is as you know. Like they don't, as you know, the audience, where the characters say stuff they already know to each other just to spoon feed it to the audience. But in short, what this movie is that you're going into is an evil force is dominating the free people of this planet that has a very valuable spice that they need for space travel. Those freedom fighters are questioning whether or not one of them is their messiah, and it is absolutely brilliantly explored the impact of people who believe and don't believe in everything. And the question is, are the Fremen going to be able to uprise and take back their planet? That's the plot of the movie. And then there's Christopher Walken. So there you go. That's,
I mean, I don't think it's hard to follow if you're watching it. I'm just saying it's one of those that you can't just,
you really should
sometimes you
watch the
have
first one.
if you watched Bad Boys 2, you probably pick it up even if you hadn't seen
Yeah,
Bad Boys, although Bad Boys is a superior film.
yeah,
This is not that. This is
yeah,
not, you could come in and be like, "Oh, I know everything that's happening here and all of that's
yeah,
going on." No, this is not that.
yeah.
But so I how did you feel about the first Dune? Was it
So on a rewatch, I lost a lot of my criticisms, and now I think it might be one of the bigger regrets of recent years. I think my two biggest regrets of not seeing a movie in theaters now are Top Gun Maverick and Dune Part 1, because I can just imagine being swept away by the filmmaking. And that my huge criticism of Part 1, which is a completely unfair criticism on the story, is, and there's like an infamous documentary about this called Hodorowski's Dune, which Dune was made in like the 60s. It's like the grandfather of all like sci-fi and so many things that came after. And Hodorowski's Dune was a project that they tried to make in the 80s, where he went around showing all of his concept art to a bunch of studios, and they used a lot of his concept art in things like Alien in particular, and like a bunch of projects. So Dune that we saw ended up feeling derivative of a lot of stuff, because a lot of stuff took inspiration from Dune. So I had a lot of problems with Dune feeling like unoriginal. The Chosen One thing is a little overdone and like things like that. But with none of that being new to me, appreciating the performances for what they are, I really like the first Dune. I love like a slow pace, takes itself seriously, gorgeously shot, as practical as possible for a fantasy world. Like I think it's amazing. But I didn't think it was the greatest thing ever, but this probably is.
I still am not, if we were giving a rating to the first Dune film, I would probably still be like thumbs neutral. And I
Wow.
had actually a different reaction than you. The stunning visuals and the filmmaking I all thought was top notch. I had zero investment in the characters in the first film.
Okay.
Probably the only character I invested in, which you're going to laugh based on things I've said about this particular actor and other roles before, um,
Duncan,
was Duncan,
Idaho.
Idaho. That was the only one I liked. And then after he gets got, I'm like, oh,
Yeah.
well, this is over. Clearly, I couldn't have cared less if Paul Atreides lived.
Mm.
And so going into the second one, I was curious to see would I feel differently, and I almost feel a little differently probably about Timothy Chalamet as an actor now than I did in 2021 because we had only seen him in a few things. I've actually never seen Call Me by Your Name, which I know is
Me either.
his big movie, so maybe I would have felt different if I had seen that, but I had seen him in like supporting parts in like Lady Bird. He's the supporting part in Little Women, and even though I enjoyed Greta Gerwig's Little Women a lot, I wasn't particularly taken with his performance. But after Dune, I thought he was fine. I just didn't care that much about his character, and I don't know if that's owing a little bit to the way it's kind of structured and chopped up. Is a lot of the first Dune film is basically first act of the book, which might have been, famously, I did not connect with the film Unbreakable that much, which I also felt was entirely first act for something that we never got to. And then once we did get to it, it was more underwhelming than the first act could have possibly been. So
Oh, that
joke's
is
on
such.
me.
We
But
should go over that sometime because the story of how those three movies came to be is a little funky and
yeah.
interesting.
But so I started wondering, oh, maybe that's a little bit of it. And like, he's having these visions of Zendaya's character, but you see her for about like 5 or 10 minutes at the end, and they have zero connection. And I like Jessica Ferguson as an actor. I like Oscar Isaac as an actor. I like Josh Brolin, but they were all moving too quickly. There isn't a very concrete like villain character. As much as I like Dave Bautista, they don't flesh him out enough, I think, in
Mhm.
the first one, which, because they're moving pretty fast.
Oh,
And Stellan
Baron
Skarsgård's
Harkonnen?
character, I mean, I thought it was sufficiently gross and creepy, but
Yeah.
not
Okay.
not particularly like, and he's not the one like on the ground that
Yeah, I know what you mean.
you're gonna face off. And they, you don't, you spend
You
so
need
much
someone
time
like
kind of
Faye.
on the
You need
build
a
up of what this world is and all the different pieces of the world, that by the time that battle sequence comes, it comes pretty quick, and it's not a
Mhm.
lot of those guys facing each other, like
Right.
main adversaries. So I thought it was a technical masterpiece that I had literally zero emotional investment to, and I don't know if that, there's a lot of different reasons for that, I guess, but that's I've heard that from other people that they had trouble connecting to it. I felt like this one, still, the scope and the visuals are stunning. What they do with that world is stunning. I was also very impressed when they go to a Harkonnen planet where they have the black sun, and the way that you get this stark black and white. But I thought this one, I especially probably appreciated the very thing that I've heard some people criticize, that the first hour not enough happens. For me, a ton
Mhm.
happens, and that's, you get to know who Paul is as a person, and Stilgar is as a person, and Johnny is as a person. I even invested more in his mother, even though you are conflicted about whether she's doing the right thing or is that doing what's best for him. But you're kind of invested in this world, and then you get this great kind of introduction for Phaedra,
Yep.
and a great performance there, and he's coming, and that they are actually in a tactile sense going to face off against one another. And Paul is going kind of on this quest, and he's conflicted, and you get to see them waging their kind of guerrilla warfare and going back and forth. And the return of Josh Brolin's character was very moving. The emotional component is what I think really puts it over the top for me. And that's why I think it's the first great film of 2024. It's one of my favorite now Villeneuve films. It's not number one for me. I
Mm.
still, it's going to take a lot to displace Arrival, which is
Oh,
just a
Arrival is
movie
yours.
that emotionally. Yeah, but I actually
Prisoners is mine.
I bumped it up to number 2. I have it
Mm,
right there between Arrival and Sicario for me. But that's probably what kicked it off a lot for me, and the performances I think are almost universally a lot better. Timothy Chalamet is on a real heater. I
yeah,
he was the star of a movie in Wonka that going in, I was like, no, I'm kind of out on this, and came out, and
yeah,
we both had it in our top 12 for the year. I'm
yeah,
waiting for it to go on sale so I can buy it. I've
yeah,
seen it twice, and I can't wait to see it again. And that's a lot due to his charisma and wildly different parts. But
yeah.
Zendaya they allow her to shine in this. I
Oh,
thought she was
yes.
incredible.
Oh my
Austin
gosh.
Butler.
Okay. I promised myself I wouldn't ramble and gush over everything, but viewers at home, there is a scene that is like a masterclass. I think, as far as I know, I'm not an actor, whatever, in performance that is just all nonverbal exchanges of looks between Zendaya and Timothy Chalamet when he makes a crucial decision right
Mhm.
at the end of the movie. It's you. They say they have
And it's
like an
gutting.
hour's. It's
It's
all. It's
rightly gutting because they spent the time and they built up that really, and I guess that's probably a little bit. I don't know if you got enough in the first one, probably because they had to do a lot in world building and setting all these pieces in motion and all this while, but you didn't have a lot of time where they got to know each other, and it was, I thought, a credit to Jason Momoa in the first movie that even though you only see Duncan Idaho like 3 scenes, he's so charismatic and you tell how
Mhm,
much he cares about them that you're very invested in him. I
mhm.
just wasn't at that point in time. I was like, I'm not sure why he's so invested in Paul. But now you kind of, you start to see it, you start to get it built up more, and I liked that a lot about this installment. So,
Yes.
do you have any more to add about Dune?
I have a question for you.
Yeah.
The book is over.
Mhm.
Uh, what do you think? What do you think Dune Part 3 is going to be?
Well, I'm sure they're going to finish the first, but aren't there multiple books?
There are, but that's the thing. Like choosing which ones to adapt has been a trick in a lot of adaptations. Like the television adaptation of Dune did, I think, like the first one, and whichever one Children of Dune is. I know it's not the second one, and it's very bizarre to think this is a series that only got bigger. There's no real clear through line towards an end goal here, so they're going to have to adapt it
I
somehow.
thought that I read that they were doing Messiah, which looks like it's actually the second book.
Okay, so is
But
that going to be all in one movie? Because
well, he said it was a plan to have 3 films, as far as I understand. I don't, going into the first one, I thought we were getting one movie, and then
mhm,
it was clear that that's not the ending. It's like, well, I guess they're making two, and now,
yeah,
well, I guess they're making three. I mean, it could be too that they're. This sounds weird. Waiting to see reaction, because for as much of a success as Dune was in some aspects, it won 6 Oscars. It
mhm.
was pretty well regarded because of the release structure. You forget it barely made, I think, 100 million total, which I know that sounds like a lot of money, but for a film of this kind of scope and scale, it's not that
You
much.
mean that's nothing? Like, is that you mean 100 million over what it cost?
I think they were talking about it's already pretty close to matching the original one's box office. And you have to remember, though, that was right when we had this. It was
Oh, that
released
was
right in the middle of
COVID.
the surge of COVID, and it got released on.
Yeah, it took a
So
hit because of
I'm looking
HBO.
up the exact box office if I can find it,
Okay.
but I
Well, while
so
you're
they
looking
might
that
have
up,
been waiting to see how this one would do commercially, and by all accounts it's done pretty fantastic for,
mhm, yeah,
I mean, it's
I I just
178, I
finished.
think, worldwide right now.
This podcast isn't going to be out for maybe like another week or so. but I just finished recording another podcast with a friend of mine. We do the High Contrast podcast, and we were talking about Dune, and what we looked at by looking over all of the critical reactions, out of 700,000 reviews on IMDb, it comes off at like a flat B. And all of that's because all of them range sporadically from like a 100% A down to a barely passing C, and that just happens to land in the middle. And I brought up with him there, it looks like with the first Dune, because of so many things going on, it was like a new thing, and it hadn't really found its audience, and people from all over had all kinds of different reactions to it. And I was really curious, now that it had 2.5 years to set in people's minds, what was the response going to be? And Dune Part 2 is now the highest ranked movie of all time on IMDb, beating The Shawshank Redemption.
I don't know if it'll stay there though, because
Probably not.
that's the initial wave. So the first film budget was 165 million. Its United States and Canadian gross total was 108,897,830. It ended up with 433 million because of worldwide, but it was less than 110 for US and Canada.
Yeah.
Which usually that's a fair chunk against $165 million budget. That's not incredible. But now this installment already, they said, was 97.1 domestically for opening weekend. So it's going to easily crush past where it was. And I think it probably is just a film that didn't get any favors in where it got released when it got released.
Yep.
So I think we both really enjoyed Dune Part 2 and would suggest you going out and seeing it in theaters. I will be curious too to see where the final grades end up settling out. I think it'll still be high. I don't know if it'll remain like number.
Yeah, I don't think it's going to be perfect, but
it surged
is interesting.
To that position going into opening weekend, which means you have a lot of people that are hardcore fans that had seen preview screenings or are critics.
Yeah.
So
we'll see.
1 week from tonight is the 96th Academy Awards. The Oscars will be no, because there's 95 Best Picture winners already. So I'm pretty sure it's got to be 96, right?
Probably.
Yeah. I thought you were saying it's the 95th, but there are
no.
There are 95 Best Picture winners. Okay.
No.
So it is a week from tonight.
I don't know. You're gonna know more than I would.
So at this point in time next week, we will not be on because we will be getting ready for the Oscars. So we wanted to take tonight to get you set for the Oscars. They kick off 7 Eastern next week. So actually they will be on at this time next week. We'll already be seeing who some of the winners will be. So that will be a little bit exciting. But we wanted to make our final picks in a couple of the major categories. Have you seen all the Best Picture nominees at this point?
I believe I have, yeah.
Yeah, because I think we had covered a lot of them. Ironically, this was a year where we were pretty close in there. 7 of the 10 Best Picture nominees were films that I had in my top 12 when we did it for 2023, and I think you had a couple of the ones I didn't. So we covered a lot of them, but I'm actually going to go backwards of the list the way I put it in there. We'll end, but Best Animated Feature, we've seen The Boy and the Heron do pretty well. I'm sticking with Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse, and I don't know if that's more of a heart pick than a head pick. But
okay, are we doing what you think will win or what you want to win? Because I put in some double.
I'm picking what I think will win.
Okay, that's what I'll go off of then.
Although,
yeah,
that one could go either way, with those movies. But I think it will repeat.
I don't understand sometimes the politics behind the Academy's appreciation for animated film. Sometimes it feels like a category that they use to write off a publicly popular movie, and sometimes it feels like the Pixar Awards. and sometimes it feels like they're trying to
Well, and
respect something like The Boy and the Heron.
it was a really strange nominee field this year because, like, Robot
Mm-hmm.
Dreams, which doesn't even really get a wide release until a little bit later this year,
Mm-hmm.
made it in there, and that is an interesting, decidedly different kind of animated film, and a film like Nimona, which I thought had kind of been
I actually
lost, had really been behind, makes the final field. Aside from
which is
Spider Verse
weird.
and Elemental, they kind of went with more indie animated choices, while the kind of populist picks is something like Wish or Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Mutant Mayhem. I feel like there's one other one that I'm forgetting, just didn't make it into the final field. So I thought that was kind of a little bit interesting. We'll see how the voting ends up, but Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse was an incredible film that won this category. I think the sequel is a worthy follow-up that will go in. I wouldn't be shocked if Boy and the Heron takes it. If it isn't one of those two, I will be genuinely
Really
surprised.
surprised. Yeah, if it's Nimona, I'm gonna be flabbergasted. Like,
Not
I
that that
like
wasn't a
Nimona a
cool movie,
lot.
but yeah.
Yeah, but then it just feels weird.
Let's transition to Best Supporting Actress. Who do you think is going to get the victory?
Okay, actually, I'm still a little split on this one because I feel like there are definitely. I don't feel like there would be so many nominations for Barbie if there wasn't a potential for it to win somewhere. And obviously, there are a lot of people who feel that they've snubbed Greta Gerwig and uh, Margot Robbie in their categories. So I feel like just because you have your pick, I'm going to go ahead and say America Ferrera.
So every year we get a few films that get a lot of nominations that don't end up winning any awards. So that wouldn't completely surprise me. However, I think Barbie will most likely win Best Original Song for What Was I Made For, and will
Okay.
probably win Production Design. Divine Joy Randolph has won at almost every level, including SAG.
Mhm.
And that's usually one of the better predictors. I thought she gave a fantastic performance. I've been a little, I loved America Ferrera, so I would love that. I also really enjoyed Danielle Brooks, who's in this category. I think any of them. A real dark horse potentially could also be Emily Blunt, just because I expect Oppenheimer is going to carry so much. You never know if people are just going to go. But I do think Divine Joy Randolph has been winning everywhere and will probably carry the day again.
Yeah.
Let's move to Best Supporting Actor. I'm going with Robert Downey Jr. He has, like Divine Joy Randolph, won every award leading up to this. I liked his performance. I think if it was down to personal preference, I might have gone with Gosling, but I think that Downey's going to end up taking it.
I actually think I don't know how it follows from like predictors from other award seasons and things like that, but my gut tells me that Ryan Gosling is winning this. I don't my pick would be Sterling K. Brown from American Fiction, but I think there's something bizarrely widespread and big about Ryan Gosling's piece in all of this that has been given so much attention. And like you said, if it's up for if it's up for best original song, it's not for I'm Just Ken, right? It's
That one is up as well, and he's going to perform that at the Oscars. I just think Billie
okay.
Eilish's song will win. They've both been getting nominated everywhere, and
Mm-hmm.
so I wouldn't be shocked if I'm Just Ken is the song where I think one of the Barbie songs will get the victory.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if it was Robert Downey Jr., but I've got a feeling about that one.
We'll move to Best Actress, and who are you going with?
3, 2, 1, Lily Gladstone.
And this
Like,
to me is the most up in the air of any of the acting races. Three of the acting races, the same person has swept pretty much all the major markers and feels pretty set. But Lily Gladstone and Emma Stone have split kind
yeah.
of all the way along. Lily Gladstone just took the SAG, and so I am leaning that way too. I think she will end up winning. If it was personal preference, Emma Stone gave my favorite lead actress performance of the year, because I can't imagine that film working with somebody who
Absolutely.
didn't do that.
Absolutely. I agree
That
with that
kind of
100%.
totally sold out. Lily Gladstone is an incredible story, and was an incredible performance as well. Either of them, I think would be great choices. And we aren't even talking about. It's such a great category. Like, I loved Carrie Mulligan, and
Mhm.
I think she's one of the most underrated actresses. I just don't. I
I
I think it's a
think that
two-person race right now.
I think that movies may be a little overlooked.
There's been a
Maestro.
huge backlash against Maestro,
Has there?
in during award season, and so I legitimately think it will end up going awardless, even though it has 7 nominations.
Weird.
I it's hard to it right now. It feels like it's going to be a lot of awards for Oppenheimer, and a couple other films are going to get some awards, but we may not have a whole bunch. Some years you have like feels like 6, 7, 8 different films kind of popping up and getting recognition through the Academy Awards. I don't think it's going to be quite as widespread this year.
Mhm.
Which brings us to Best Actor, and I think Killian Murphy is going to take it.
Yep, me too. Killian Murphy was he's probably going to win. Jeffrey Wright, and hear me out on this. Well, I'll explain this more after the best director picture one, but it's going to be Killian Murphy, I think.
Which brings us to Best Director, and I thought this was a fitting picture. I think these two guys kind of wedded together. I think that this is finally going to be Christopher Nolan's year.
Mm-hmm. Yep, I absolutely think it would, and I think he super deserves it. And that's the thing for me is Cillian Murphy is incredible in that movie, but the star is Christopher Nolan and his production. And so I really think Jeffrey Wright would be just if you're just focused on what the lead actor has to bring to a movie. I really feel like that's the role that I think deserves Best Actor. But Cillian Murphy's going to take it, and Christopher Nolan is going to take and deserves the Best Picture. I think it's just I think that's
So
I can't even.
you think Best Picture is going to go to Oppenheimer?
Yeah.
Yeah, I also think Oppenheimer is going to win. If you had to pick a dark horse for Best Picture, which would you go with?
Okay. Split because depending on what else it's gotten, I don't think it's impossible for Barbie to take it. I really, honestly, I don't think that they're going to do that. But if you're saying dark horse pick, um, but I mean, for me, American Fiction. I was absolutely blown away by that movie's writing and the supplementary, like just vibes and feelings and direction of the whole thing. It wasn't the achievement that like Oppenheimer was in terms of filmmaking, but I don't think it needs to be just for it to be just a really powerful, personally kind of movie. So yeah.
So for me, um, the one that I think could end up being a dark horse for Best Picture, and I don't know why it's just been a nagging thought that I've had, is Anatomy of a Fall, which is only not in the Best International Feature competition because France decided to put up something else. I actually think Anatomy of a Fall, we've seen it win writing, directing awards in different places. I think that it probably will win Best Original Screenplay for Justine Triet and
You know
Arthur.
what? I don't hate that.
Well, like if you watch earlier today, I did a video which you guys can find on our channel where I ranked my personal ranking for the Best Picture nominees,
Yeah.
and I have that one 10 out of 10. It's by far not my favorite, but there are some really hardcore ardent fans out there,
And
and
I get it. It's just
I
at
don't.
a certain point,
Well, you're going dark horse here.
how good is too good of a job doing what you're doing? Like congratulations. You very successfully got a dog to perfectly simulate that traumatic experience that I had to sit through. Like great job. A for effort. Like I don't know. It's just it's so weird.
I mean, it'll be interesting to see. I think Oppenheimer's pretty well got it. There are some interesting choices in there. It's just if we're going for like true dark horse that
What are all of the best picture? What are the nominees?
so Anatomy of a Fall, The
Hmm.
Zone of Interest, The
Right.
Holdovers, Killers of
Uh-huh.
the Flower Moon, American Fiction, Maestro, Past Lives, Poor Things, Oppenheimer, and Barbie.
Just I can't even. I was gonna pick two or three from that list, but just look at that list. Like, look at that list. In a year where Anatomy of a Fall wins, and you
But
have something as original
it
as
won the
Poor
Palme
Things,
d'Or.
great for it. And it probably deserves it. That's great. But I'm just saying, in a world where we're talking about what was the best movie that came out this year, you have a better example in terms of like cultural references and a message about interpersonal people in American fiction, and you have better imagination and originality in Poor Things, and you have monumental filmmaking achievement in Oppenheimer. You have in every way that a movie can be better. I think there is an example of a better movie on that list. I don't I oh.
There are a couple of, Barbie would be one. Past Lives for me would be another. If it
Mm,
won Best Picture, that I would I would walk away okay with that.
mm.
I thought Anatomy of Fall was a fine movie. If we were doing it,
I thought it was very good.
I would give it a thumbs up. You're right to me that given the field and given the things we saw that year, I would not be as super psyched if it won Best Picture. I'm not saying that's what I want to win. I just feel like
Right, right, right.
when you're
But like
looking at dark
you got a weird
horses and
feeling.
what people seem to have been drawn to,
Mhm.
in taste and in everything, when films start winning a lot of writing directing awards, then you know that they are somewhere somewhere in the conversation.
Yep. Yep.
So it will
Oh
be
man, I'm gonna be
interesting to
upset.
see. Well, I'm sure you've not be texting each other at this point in time next week. Like,
Right.
can you believe this? Why was
Yeah.
Jimmy Kimmel's monologue 37 minutes when we have no? Just kidding.
Yeah.
I'm excited to see some fun things. I'm excited to see the original song. There's so many great and worthy nominees in so many fields. That makes me excited. From
Mhm.
I usually try to see as much as I possibly can. I've seen, I think, almost all the shorts now, too. I've seen all the documentary shorts. I think I've seen
That's
four
cool.
of the live action and four of the animated shorts. There are some fun and interesting films, some fun and different things, in animated features and international features. The documentaries are almost all depressing, so you're welcome, America.
Yeah, but that's the thing. I think it's worth noting that I'm sorry, like with the last couple of weeks of movies that have come out, it's sort of slim pickings for 2024 right now. So why not get caught up for Oscars? You
Yeah,
know?
and a lot of places have Oscar week passes where you can check out the Best Picture nominees if you haven't seen them. A very worthy slate this year to go and check out. I know the Oscar Shorts program will be out in theaters next weekend as well. If you have a spare 3.5 hours to
Yep.
watch 15 films,
If you're not watching Dune with those 3 hours.
that's true. It
Yeah.
is. Well, it's a little bit longer than Dune. Dune wasn't quite 3 hours. It
It
was what,
wasn't. It
two
was
hours and 45
merciful.
minutes. Yeah.
Yeah.
I feel like we're trending toward longer films. I mean, even look at that Best Picture field. There are quite a few that are in the
Mm,
2.5 hour plus range. Or Killers of the Flower Moon, I think, is 3.5 hours.
yeah.
So there you go. Well, that'll do it for us this week. Like I mentioned, we will not be on in this slot next week because we will be watching the Oscars.
Yep.
We will be back on St. Patrick's Day. That was terrible, but I tried. We will talk about Damsel with Millie Bobby Brown, which is coming to Netflix next week. And then we will
Mhm.
be looking back at a St. Patrick's Day classic in The Boondock Saints, which, to make me feel incredibly old, is now 25 years old.
But not 30.
Thank God, because that was the year I graduated from high school.
Oh, okay.
So until then, we will see you on the spice fields of Arrakis at the movies.